The virus I'll be presenting is the Japanese encephalitis virus. The Japanese encephalitis virus, or JEV, is a mosquito-borne flavivirus and belongs to the family of the Flaviviridae. JEV has very unique physical characteristics. The virus has a crystal-like envelope surrounding it. Its capsids are icosahedral, which is basically 20 equilateral triangular-shaped capsids, and its shape is around 40 to 60 nanometers in diameter. The virus is also a linear positive single-stranded RNA virus, which basically means it encodes for mRNA and proteins. JEV causes encephalitis and is actually the cause of viral encephalitis in Asia. The disease is related to dengue, yellow fever, and West Nile virus. The disease encephalitis is basically an inflammation of the brain. The symptoms following the disease is usually a fever, headache, and in some rare cases, death. Being a zoonotic disease, it's usually rare for people to get it. It's actually more common for children and newborns to get the disease. Most people who do get infected are asymptomatic to the disease or don't develop the symptoms. Roughly only 1% who come in contact with JEV get it. Of that 1%, only 30% of the people will develop fatal symptoms and 50% will develop neuropsychiatric complications. The main epidemic vector for JEV are mosquitoes. Usually mosquitoes of the Culex species, specifically C. Titaniorhynchus. Pigs and birds are effective amplifying hosts for JEV, and it usually targets egrets and black-crowned herons. Humans are usually dead-end hosts, as they usually do not have or develop high concentrations of JEV in their blood. JEV is transmitted by being bit by infected mosquitoes. Although really rare, the virus can easily be transmitted by exposure of someone who is infected. JEV is usually transmitted in specific temperate regions, like Asia, Western Pacific, and Northern Australia. Transmission is highest during May and September. The seasons also vary depending on the amount of rainfall and the patterns of bird migrations. It can actually occur any time of the year, specifically in areas with rural agriculture practices, especially in places where people grow rice. There are ways you can actually be tested for JEV. They test the serum of the cerebrospinal fluid to detect IgM antibodies. The evidence is usually tied to neurological infection. The test is commercially available, and other methods of tests can be taken up by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. There are some ways to prevent JEV from being too invasive. For one, it's usually recommended to not travel for long periods of time near Japanese encephalitis endemic countries. Usually those are the only places where you have to worry about this disease. And if you do, there are simple methods to make sure you stay safe. One way is to use a lot of mosquito repellent products, such as sprays and lotions. It's also important to have mosquito coils and vaporizers on deck at all times, and wear long sleeves to avoid getting bitten. Since the disease is usually favorable towards young children and newborns, it's important to constantly reapply repellents on children. Other than that, the obvious is to pay attention to related symptoms and avoid coming into contact with people who have it. There is only little treatment available for humans who actually develop JEV. There are only methods to manage JEV, but these methods usually don't show proof of proper treatment. The most important is to seek medical attention as soon as possible. The disease will remain asymptomatic, But if left untreated, the person can actually develop symptoms over time, especially in later years. The person who is infected should always be hospitalized so they can have constant supportive care and close observation. The treatment is usually symptomatic, so professionals will recommend to have constant rest, drink a lot of fluids, and to use pain relievers and medication to reduce fever.